Welcome to Mommy Heal Thyself. We feature guests who provide you with the tools, resources, and strategies you need to say no to a life of pain and suffering from all forms of preventable disease, toxic drugs, and unnecessary surgeries. We hope to inspire you to boldly reclaim your ability to heal and to serve the ones you love.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Mommy Heal Thyself. Today, I have with me RS, Ruffshot, June, and he grew up in Philadelphia, PA, about as far from cattle country as you can get. He often jokes that he has no business being in the cattle industry, having never seen a cow up close until later on in life. But Texas Slim, founder of the Beef Initiative, saw things differently. Beneath June's work was something deeper. He lost his mother in his early 20s. After years of watching her struggle under the weight of a broken food system and a fraying community. That loss became his fuel. Today, as a creative strategist for Beef Initiative, June leads the design and storytelling behind the movement, working to reconnect families to real food, real ranchers, and the health of their local communities, so others might be spared the fight that he could not win for his mom. As the executive producer of the upcoming Beef Maps docuseries, his work will be highlighting the independent ranchers and regenerative food solutions. Summarily, he works at the intersection of food, health, and community building to shape the foundation's long-term vision. My June, I tell you, you are a godsend because you are that missing piece of our puzzle in terms of really talking about, as you said, that intersection of food, health, and community. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about what your story is, how you got to this junction, and how that relates to what you were saying with regards to your mother's battle.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for bringing me on. It's such a huge pleasure to be here. I usually don't do a lot of public talks. Getting more into it, and you saw me on the IMA presentation talking about sovereign health. And so, I kind of got here by the grace of God. I'm from Philadelphia, like you said. I'm from, split between inner city poverty and suburban mediocrity, I like to say. So I kind of come from two different worlds, none of them being agricultural, both of them being removed from that heritage that we all actually share. And it wasn't until I met Texas Slim and got involved with the Beef Initiative that I came to understand all of the trauma and all of the struggles that I grew up with and seeing my mom, encounter homelessness, kind of bouncing around places, drug addiction, that kind of thing. My whole life was really a struggle to try to find out why that was and how I could, break away from that and how I could help others break away from that. What I didn't consider was what had transpired the 70 years before that, before I came around, before my mom came around and all that stuff. And what I learned from the Beef Initiative in Texas Slim was that moms used to cook with tallow. They used to cook with beef fat, right? And this was the time before vegetable oil was invented, before Crisco was a thing. Before they decided to appropriate machine lubricant for our food supply, right? And if you look back at photos back then, you see that everyone's looking pretty healthy.
Blender.
Hey, McDonald's was still around, so it wasn't McDonald's fault. It wasn't fast food. It was something else, right? And when I learned that it was tallow, and then I started digging a little bit deeper and learned about how communities used to have access to butcher shops and meat markets. And now, I grew up without an imagination for any of that, right? I'd barely ever walked into a butcher shop. The only meat market was the bodega. And, most of that food's coming from what I later found out were just 4 multinational corporations, right? So we lost access to our food system. We lost access to tallow. We lost access to a primary baseline cooking ingredient that we didn't have to worry about where our health was coming from. There's a reason why we don't think about it so much today, generally speaking. It's because why should we have to? It's just food, right? It's just food. We're just trying to survive. And yet all of our options are, especially in America, they're poison, right? As the Maha movement, as RFK is shining a bright light on right now. There's a lot that has to change, and there's a lot that we have to innovate, but we're innovating back towards our shared agricultural heritage, is what I like to say. Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the messages that really resonated with me, because our sister company, Sankofa, the word Sankofa means to go back to the wisdom of our ancestors. And really and truly, I think we're coming full circle when it comes to health, when it comes to food, sustainability of our planet. Everything is about really, as you said, re-envisioning what our ancestors did historically. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I am super excited about this whole concept of community. And before we got started, we were discussing this idea of herd sharing, because I told you that some of my neighbors and I were thinking about the idea of getting a baby cow and growing that cow, because we have 5 acres here with It Takes a Village Ministry, and I don't really do anything with it. And they're like, well, Michelle, we could get a cow and put it on your property and we could share that thing. I was like, oh, I don't know. Yep. So tell us a little bit more about this whole beef initiative and the sharing and the community concept and networking and how all of that comes together.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, we have a lot of moving parts. And if I were to go through all of them individually and tell you how they're all connected, you'd be like, okay, I don't get it. But at its base, the best way to describe what we do is there's the beef and there's the initiative, right? So we've got the beef, we've got the ranchers, we've got the beef boxes, we've got the steaks, the ground beef, all the things that can nourish us. And we've got the initiative behind it, right? Because we're not Butcher Box, we're not Good Ranchers, we're not any of these, larger, more mainstream outlets. What we aim to do is connect local communities to their local ranchers peer to peer. And that's the important part about it, right? Peer to peer, getting out of the way, not trying to make $1 off of every steak that's sold, right? It's like we've got, in the past 5 years, we've lost 141,000 family farms. We have 67 years until we lose the last one. Right. So we're not out here to make $1 off of these steaks. We're out here to save the cattle industry, to save the health of the nation, and to save the health of our communities. And our theory, and it's not much of a theory, it's more rooted in historical fact. If we place a processing center in every county in this nation, that means that every rancher in that county will have a place to go take their cows to get slaughtered and turned into beef. That processing center can serve its local community with clean local beef, which means that the price is not going to be crazy. It reinvigorates the local economy, the local culture. And, that's really what we're all about here. The Beef Initiative has a lot going on, but at its core, it's about human relationships. And how do we get back to that? Because you were telling me earlier that you went to, the farmer's market and you shook your rancher's hand. You asked to be educated about their process. And I'm sure that you were very, very respectful and just curious minded, because I can tell that's the kind of person you are. But other people aren't quite like that. And that's okay, because what they're coming into this with is a lot of noise about what health is, about what nutrition is. And, oftentimes, now imagine you're a rancher. You're having trouble maintaining your farm's profitability. You every night you go to sleep, you're like, I don't know if this dream is going to last. Am I going to be that next statistic, right?
Yeah.
And you wait until Saturday, the farmer's market comes, and you've had these couple nights where you're thinking about what's next, right? You get to the farmer's market and you got your steaks there for sale for $25. And you have a consumer come in and they say, hey, I would love to purchase one of your steaks. Oh, it's $25. Huh? What? Okay. Is it organic? Oh, is it grass fed? Right. And you start interrogating these guys. And it's like, hold on a second. Just take a step back here for a second. First of all, this is not a corporation. This is not some faceless entity. This is a real person who's serving his community based on his family values a lot of the time, right? So one, he's not going to feed you poison. This is his family's legacy we're talking about. When you go to the grocery store and you pick up a pack of ground beef, you can have anywhere between 60 and 100 different cows in 1 pound of ground beef. That rancher, that 1 pack of ground beef from your local rancher at the farmer's market, it's 1 cow, right? And so that's the main difference. So when you approach these guys, you got to think about it a lot differently. And the way that you did it sounds like you did it in a very humble and honorable way, where you just want to know about the cows. That's all, right? It's not an interrogation. It's just an education.
I love that you say that, because actually in my community, we have an annual farm tour where we're able to go to all the different farms and speak with the owners of the farms. And so, one of the things that you talked about was regenerative agriculture. So some of us are familiar with regenerative agriculture, but you're talking also about regenerative farming, many people are familiar with regenerative farming, but you're talking about regenerative agriculture. And what I've shared with people is that this cannot happen overnight, like you said. And in many cases, our farmers and our ranchers and our herders, they are going against the grain. They're not getting the government subsidies and all of that other help, that other farms are getting. And so that calculates into the pricing. But more importantly, what I've shared with people is that even if they're not able to, quote unquote, get that label of organic, which to me is just a racket, actually, but that's another story for another day. But even if they don't meet that criteria, the reality is that they're still light years ahead of what you're getting at Walmart or Costco or Publix or any of those places. Because as you said, those packages are combinations of God knows where they're coming from. They're probably coming from overseas, Argentina, all of these different
They're coming from overseas,
where they don't have the same criteria that we have here in this country. Then it's shipped for God knows how long. It's irradiated. They put all kinds of coloring in it. Oh my gosh, it's just horrible. So how can we, I guess what I'm getting at is, you said in terms of our conversation with our ranchers, to come to our conversations with a spirit of curiosity as opposed to grilling condemnation. So I get that. And so what are some other ways that we can support our local ranchers? And for those people who are in cities, how does it work for them?
Sure. Yeah. If you're in a city, something I like to talk about, like you said, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from North Philly, really. And I never got close to agriculture, didn't see a cow until much, much, much later on in life. But I went back to Philly, right? I went back to Philly last year. I go back all the time, but I went back last year for the holidays. And I decided that I would take a little drive, the same little kind of drive that Texas Slim took me on when we went on a 64-day journey together across the back roads of the entire country. And what I learned on that trip was, outside of every major city, off of every major highway, it's cattle country, right? And so when I got back to Philly, I moved down to Florida a couple of years back. before I found beef, or really it was about the same time. And then when I went back to Philly, I said, okay, it's time to start this journey from back home. I had a lot of bad memories, a lot of, Philadelphia's, it's a beautiful city, but there's a lot wrong with it too, right? Especially if you're from the inner city. And so when I went back, I said, I'm gonna go drive 45 minutes away. I can't believe that I never just drove 45 minutes away. And what did I find? Well, I found a farm that was run by the Mennonites, and they had tons of beef, cows. They had a slaughterhouse, and that was my first kind of opening up of this. This is what the city needs, right? The city needs to be connected with the countryside. We have a lot of talk these days, a lot of political rhetoric, and a lot of there's an imagination for hatred, right? Like people have an imagination that other people hate them. And I have a theory that none of them actually hate each other at all. And if we connect the countryside, specifically the beef ranchers, to the city, then we can undo a lot of what I think is really just rhetoric, entertainment, fear, a lot of that stuff. Because when coming from Philly, going out to all these different states all throughout the South, of course, I was like, oh God, I'm about to go meet a bunch of farmers in the South. This is going to be crazy, right? It wasn't at all, right? It wasn't at all. It was just people, like being people and being totally kind and being humble, and like, it was nothing like what we imagine it is, right? And this is the case for Texas, it's the case for Arkansas, it's the case for Florida, and it's the case for Philadelphia, and it's the case for New York City, right? And so I think the pathway I think your question was, what's the best way for people from the city to connect with their local ranchers? One, beefmaps.com, which is a platform that I helped create. It was developed out of that 64-day journey that me and Texas Slim took. So this thing was not just, a piece of software with a bunch of business development behind it. It's just some guys with some passion about what's going on. And we created this map, and we don't have ranchers everywhere, right? And this is just a marker system. A lot of it's crowdsourced. So the community hit us up, say, hey, this is my rancher. You guys got to put them on the map. And so that's what we did, right? And if you're on the Northeast, you can look up on that map, beefmaps.com, and you will be like, oh my gosh, there is beef all over New York and New Jersey.
Wow.
Who knew, right? I had no idea. I grew up partly in New Jersey, and now that I have beef maps, there's 4 or 5 ranchers right in New Jersey, and they were around when I was there, but I didn't know about them, right?
That's amazing that you say that, because, we have stewards in different locations, and one of our stewards is right there in New York City.
Nice.
And you gave me the idea because you mentioned this whole political rah-rah, and I know everybody's all excited about RFK and everything, and people took buses to go to the Capitol to advocate on his behalf. And, we even have, we have people taking buses to go to Vegas or things of that nature. So I was wondering, maybe we could organize a bus to go to the ranch.
Yes.
That is what's going to really make a difference. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have people going to the Capitol and going to Vegas, even if they want to go to, but in terms of actually moving the needle with regards to the health of our families, our individual personal families, and our communities, there is nothing better than connecting our people who are in the cities or in the suburbs or wherever they may be with actual ranchers. Maybe like adopt a ranch or something like that. I don't know.
That's amazing.
Adopt
you know
a cow.
what? It's almost like you've been sitting here behind the scenes with us this whole time. That's so funny you say adopt a ranch, because we actually did do an event at the Cattleman's Feast in Nashville at the Bitcoin conference of all places. We had about 700 people show up for Cattleman's Feast, which is the biggest exposition and educational experience where we cut up an entire cow. We cook all the beef. Johnny Ochoa, old Butch from Texas, from Hometown Meat Market. He's our butcher. He's our star butcher. And him and Cole Bolton, they cooked up. Honestly, I really can't even tell you how many pounds of beef. It was a whole cow, probably a little bit more. But we had an event there called the Tomahawk Ribeye Eating Contest, right? And leave what does Texas Slim say? Leave your weenies at the door. He said, "This ain't a hot dog eating contest. Leave your weenies at the door." And what it was we had folks like Sean Baker, Dr. Camberry, Zane Griggs, a couple of other great folks up there, eating as many big tomahawk ribeyes as they could. And you know what a tomahawk is? That's the one you hold with your hand. We didn't make them tie their one hand behind their back, but we could have. Sean Baker, if I'm sure people here on camera famous of all things, right? And thank God for that, because he has done just so much good for the beef industry. He won the tomahawk ribeye eating contest. He ate 3 tomahawk ribeyes, and these things were like 2.5 pounds each.
Woo! Now, here's the thing, right? People complain to us afterwards. How dare you that is just gluttony. It's overconsumption. It's this, it's that, right? All right. Sure. Absolutely. But here's the thing that we discovered. And here's the thing that we're all going to start learning about beef, right? Is that beef is medicine, right? And beef is a kind of medicine that you can't really overdose on. And what happened with Sean Baker was I talked to him 3 days after the event. He was like, guys, okay, 1, I've never eaten that much beef in a sitting before, so that was different. He said, 2, I did not have a single piece of food for two days. 2 days. He didn't consume anything. And he said he wasn't hungry. He went to sleep, woke up, worked out, wanted to go eat some beef on camera, but wasn't hungry. Next day, went to sleep, worked out, still not hungry. All from the nutrients from those 3 tomahawk ribeyes that he ate in one sitting in about 30 minutes. And I love that you're bringing this up, because, we live in a world where there's a lot of seemingly conflicting messaging with regards to food, and particularly with regards to meat. So people will cite 50 million different studies about, eating beef causes XYZ illnesses. And what I've shared with people, and this is after really thinking about it, because I used to be vegan, several years ago. And then I transitioned back to eating meat. And what I realized is that they were really comparing apples and oranges. And what I mean by that is the quote unquote beef that most people are eating in their groceries from their grocery stores is the equivalent of toxic meat substitute vegan meals. So when I talk about a vegan diet, I say you can't talk about saying, oh, I'm just going to eat things that has no meat, and I'm going to eat the fake burgers and the fake chickens and the fake this and the fake that. I said, that is just as bad as eating Mickey D burgers. And at the same time, you can't compare a Mickey D burger with the meat that you were talking about, which is coming fresh off the ranch from cows that are actually out there in the pasture eating beautiful green grass that are not being pumped up with hormones and all this other stuff. And so we have to I would really love for them to come out with some serious studies about what it means to consume regenerative beef, if that's even a label that I'm kind of making.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's good.
As opposed to comparing it when they make these comparisons of a quote unquote vegan lifestyle versus meat, they're comparing it to crap. They're comparing it to the equivalent of fake vegan meals as opposed to real stuff like tallow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the studies that show what happens when people consume tallow as opposed to the vegetable oils and the lard and the Crisco and all of those other things, you know, that are refined as opposed to being rich with nutrients and essential fatty acids and all of those different things that are just beautiful. So when you tell that story about that gentleman who ate all of that beef and the fact that he went days not needing anything else. So really what we're talking about is a nutrient source that is dense, you know, as opposed to all of this other, oh gosh, I'm even saddened to think of all the crap that I'm eating from these local places. But I'm convicted. In any case, I'll put it back on your take, June, sorry.
And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So the question is, how do we reach people with an understanding that this is different? Meaning, how is the beef in the ranches that are involved in the beef initiative different from something that they would get in, say, Walmart or Costco or any of these other places?
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, one, the studies are happening. You know, this is a new field of inquiry in a sense. And that's what our presentation was about the other night, the Sovereign Health Framework. And what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to endow the I Am Texas Slim Foundation with the funds that can allow that kind of research to be propagated, right? And to become a kind of, a kind of qualitative standard, right? So that night I spoke about Dr. Sabine Hazen and Brooke Miller. Mm-hmm. Brooke Miller from Ginger Hill Angus, he's a rancher, and Dr. Sabine Hazen, who is a microbiome scientist. They came together one day through the Beef Initiative, and we filmed it, of course. And she collected her very first scientific samples of stool from the microbiome of the cow, right?
Hold on.
And yeah, and so this is all in development. I was talking with Sabine the other day, and coming from Philadelphia, drug addiction and is a huge thing. I'm actually from a neighborhood that is the most heroin trafficked neighborhood in the world. It is an open air drug market, and it's absolutely horrifying, right? It seems like a trap that is inescapable. Fentanyl, heroin, Xanax, all the pills, right? All the drugs that people are using. Well, I have a theory, and I know this from just the way that beef kind of solved a lot of my physical and mental health problems when I became, mostly carnivore, is I think the solution to the opioid epidemic in this country is beef. And I think that Dr. Sabine's work and other scientists' work through the Beef Initiative and the I Am Texas Slim Foundation can and will prove that beef, cows, solve the addiction problems in this country. Not only do they solve the addiction problems, but they also revitalize the local economy by connecting local merchants with local producers. Because what we need to do is we need to build a pathway that, look, this isn't a David and Goliath situation where, one wins and the other loses, right? It's the powers that we are up against are so strong. We're not going to go fight them. It's ridiculous. What we're going to do is we're going to make better science. We're going to make more honest relationships between researchers and consumers and agriculture, right? And so that's what we think is possible. So to address, is is there any work being done to prove that this regenerative beef is better, in fact, for you? Yes. Dr. Sabine Hazen's work, R.C. Carter from Carter Country Meats. Shout out to RC. He's a great guy. He's up in Wyoming. He's got a nonprofit that he just launched called Eversoil, and he's doing a lot of omega-3s and 6s testing of his beef. And I don't have a lot of information on that, so we won't get into that. But so that's the science side of it, and that's the kind of like study side of it. Now, here's the other part of it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not I'm a researcher, I guess, just myself. I'm the creative strategist, right? So I kind of stay up here, and if I get a fact wrong, someone comes around and slaps me in the back of the head later, like, dummy, why did you say that, right? So here's where my skill set comes in as far as like being able to talk about, what are the ramifications of eating beef? I'll say this. You can go to the grocery store and you can buy that grass-fed ribeye. Sure. You can buy it for whatever it is at the grocery store now. It's going to be $28, right, from Whole Foods. And you can go ahead and go to the farmer's market and go to your local rancher, and you can go get that same exact 1 pound grass-fed ribeye. Now, go ahead and eat one of them one day. Let's eat the grocery store grass-fed ribeye one day. 8 ounces, right? Whatever, a pound. 8 ounces is what you eat. Now, I did this because before I really got into everything that I do now, connecting with my local rancher and really making the handshake, because it's super important. I buy my beef at $8 a pound for ribeyes, and it's literally the best. Whoa, that's ever. A good deal. It's the best deal. And that's what happens when you shake your rancher's hand and you go meet them at the farm, right? So, but let me finish my story about what happened when I took that 8 ounces back home, right? I got 2 pieces of meat, one from the grocery store, one from the farm. They're both grass-fed. They're both looking great, right? I cook one on Monday from the grocery store. I eat it at 6 a.m. And you know what? I don't get hungry until, let's say, maybe noon, right? Maybe it's like 1 or 2, right? But okay, it's still lunchtime. That makes sense, sure. But it's still no snacks, just that one piece of beef. So right then and there, it's automatically like, okay, 1, I'm saving money by not snacking so much. 2, I just don't desire like as much, right? All right. So that's the grocery store beef. Fine, right? That's cool. Now I go to my local rancher and I buy that same piece of grass-fed beef. I bring it home. I eat it on Tuesday. I start at 6 a.m. and I do not get hungry again until 4 or 5, right? Sure. Okay. I'm thin and, I don't need to eat all that, right? But like, the point is that I didn't even get hungry. So the grocery store beef maybe lasted me, if I was lucky, 6 hours, right? If I was lucky, but most of the time it was about 4 hours, which is, that's cool. If you eat cereal in the morning, you're hungry about 2 hours later, right? Yeah. And so that was my actual experience. And when I did that test and I was like, okay, same 8 ounces, one lasts me 4 hours, the other one lasts me 6 to 8 hours. Why? Well, why is that? Because my body got the right nutrient content that it needed from. Now you're getting it on both sides. Granted, beef is beef. Just eat beef. Don't be a snob, right? Just eat beef. You'll be good. Start somewhere. If it's at the grocery store, that's totally fine. Just eat beef. Eating 100 different cows in one pack is better than eating no cows. Okay. But that was my lived experience. And that's when I was like, man, there is something really, really special about what the Beef Initiative is doing with local beef, because it's not just about local ranchers, right? It's literally about, your local biome and what's possible when you eat from someone that you can shake hands with.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's so important. You know, it echoes some of the sentiment behind even going to farmers markets and getting local produce as opposed to produce that is being shipped from God knows which country. And I would like to put another layer on it, that there's just something different about cows or goats or chickens or food that is produced by a family. You know, because that family has that emotional connection to the animal. I've seen people like I have chickens, and I lost my chickens, and I was just devastated emotionally, you know. And it's the same thing that I see when I talk to some of the ranchers. You could see that care that's in them. And I truly believe that the emotions that an animal lives with becomes embedded in their tissues and their flesh. And that is transmitted to the person who consumes them. So I think that is an added layer to even consider the energetics of that exchange of being part of a community that has nurtured a farmer, and the farmer has nurtured his children, in a way of speaking. You know, it's just something really, really beautiful that we have undervalued and forgotten. And that's why the way that you title this in terms of our cultural heritage, and that cultural heritage is found in all cultures that I know of, that connection with the animals of their surrounding environment.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the greatest example that I like to use about sort of, I guess, when you talk about regenerative agriculture, there's a couple of definitions that people use. I kind of we float around a little bit, but the way that I understand regenerative agriculture is it's about rotating pastures, right? And there's a great example of a man named Will Harris from White Oak Pasture. If you're in Florida, you can get his beef, great beef from Publix. It's at the grocery store, so you can, for I think it's like $12 a pound or something like that. I get it whenever I don't feel like driving for an hour. But so what he does is, as he's rotating pastures, these cows are rotating, they're going around and around, they're going to different spots. Eventually they end up, now with Mr. Will, you know, he's a great Georgian man. He's got that accent. Oh my gosh, he's the best, right? And shout out to Will and Mr. Will and Jenny, of course, his daughter. And they rotate the cows, they rotate them, and then one of the pastures is behind the processing center. So these cows, they're just eating, they're just doing their thing, and la-di-da, their heads are always down, you know. And suddenly they're just, one day they're in a pasture and there's a building there. So they just keep on going, and there we go. And now it's time for slaughter, right? And these cows, they live a basically perfect life. And then they maybe have maybe 30 seconds of a bad day, maybe less than that, right? So, gosh, I wish that my whole life just had 30 seconds of a bad day. I don't know if I'd be doing what I do right now.
Oh, gosh. Only you would say that, June. That's going to be his parting pearl of wisdom.
I wish I was a cow. Right? June, he wished he was a cow. I wish I was a cow on Mr. Harris's pastures, that's for sure.
Exactly. It always has to be qualified with exactly where do you want to be a cow. My husband tells me about our little fur baby, and he's like, oh, she's the luckiest fur baby. And I'm like, yeah, because of where she is, because of the house that she's in. But not all fur babies have that kind of blessed life. In any case, if you can just tell us, what is the most important takeaway that you want our audience to have from this?
I think the most important takeaway is what we started this with, and It's a simple phrase, and we use it a lot. And it's shake your rancher's hand and ask to be educated. It's that simple. And you probably wondering, how do I do that? Well, your first step is go to welcometobeef.com and you drop your email. Ranch Mama Shannon from Ebersole Cattle up in southern Iowa. She will be writing you a ton of emails and educating you about what she does, what the other ranchers do, and you'll have access to exclusive beef deals. And we've got skincare made from tallow. We've got soap. We've got snack sticks, steaks, so much, right? And you're going to get all of that at welcometobeef.com. And then the other place that you'll go to shake your rancher's hand physically is beefmaps.com. And so that's the mapping system. You'll just scroll around. We've got a search bar. Yeah. It's currently in beta as we develop this. We are at the Beef Initiative. We're like a family farm. Ranch Mama Shannon. I mean, that's not just a marketing trick. She's actually a ranch mama. Texas Slim, he's a cattleman, right? Cole Bolton as a rancher. So we've got all this stuff in development, and we really need the community support to make this thing come to life. And so if you'd like to support our mission at welcometobeef.com, at beefmaps.com, what you'll do is you'll head on over to savebeef.org and you'll drop your email there. And if you'd like to partner with us in some way as a consumer, as a rancher, as a doctor, we would love to start adding keto and carnivore health specialists to Beef Maps as well, right? So, but all of this requires the community support. So you'll do all of that at savebeef.org. So 3 websites: welcometobeef.com, beefmaps.com, and savebeef.org.
And we will have those links in the show notes. Well, June, thank you very, very much for joining us today and sharing all the stories as well as your desire to be a cow in the next life. And all this valuable information. And, one of the things that I did after I went to Beef Maps, I saw that my local rancher was not there. And so I actually reached out to her and I said, look, you need to get yourself on this map. So if you know of local ranchers in your community, please encourage them to get themselves onto the map so that we can have a better picture of exactly how many people we need to be nurturing. Because I don't know about you, I definitely do not want to see a time where we do not have any more family ranches and family farms. So with your help, we can help to protect and preserve and restore our cultural heritage.
Yes.
Until next time, my ladies and gents, peace and blessings. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Mommy Heal Thyself. If you like what we're doing here, please share, subscribe, like us, and leave a comment. Your feedback is very much appreciated.